What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Roman's Creative Academy. As always, I'm Jay.
And I'm Mike.
And today we're really going to talk about what's next, right? Last week, if you were with us, we talked about the 4 main questions we ask to sellers to basically see if creative financing solution would be beneficial to them. So basically this week we're talking about what's next after you get those 4 questions or multiple questions that we ask. What do you do next, right? So I'm going to give the mic to Mike. I really need to stop saying that, but here we go.
So now we're going to step into Mike's world, right? And this is where we start talking about negotiating. This is fun because it's like playing chess. I was never good at playing chess, but this is my type of chess.
Don't put me to negotiate.
So when we're talking with sellers, right? And after you get through all those questions we talked about last week, so to recap, it's why they're selling, how soon they're looking to sell, how much they owe, and what do they need for the home. After we get through all those things and we see if it's something that could actually work for them, the next step is that we need to actually dive into the terms, right? So what does that look like? When you are negotiating terms, you're looking at 4 main points. You're looking at purchase price, down payment, term length, and monthly payment. I'm going to get into monthly payment because I know a lot of you guys are already saying, but Mike, what if it's a sub-2 deal? The payment's already negotiated because it's with the bank. We're going to get into that, don't worry.
But before he dives into that, I want to highlight the 2 main terms that we focus on. And that is 1, the term length, and 2, the down payment.
Those are extremely important. Why are they so important? The reason being, right, is if you're negotiating with a seller, it's all give and take. It's just like when a little kid is negotiating with a piece of candy, right? It's all give and take. Sure, I'll give you your chocolate bar, but you got to eat dinner first.
He's a professional at this. Kathy, I know you're watching.
Yep. When you're negotiating with a seller, a lot of times they're going to want something in return for something else, right? And what we do is we say, sure, no problem, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I will give you what you need in order to get this done, but in return, this is what I can do, right? And I'm not pitching these things to the seller. I'm not giving them an offer. I am asking discovery questions in order to get them to tell me what they need.
And then you pitch it.
Correct. So with that being said, to give you a little bit of an example, I love examples because it's how I learn, and I know it's how a lot of you guys learn. A hypothetical situation is great, but when you give a concrete example, it really helps it stick in your mind. So let's give an example of a deal that we're going to be writing up actually today. This is a prime example of what we're talking about here. So the seller, she has a house, right, where we talked about all these 4 categories that we just talked about. So we talked about purchase price, we talked about term length, we talked about down payment, and we also talked about monthly payment, right? So this seller told me that she wanted $73,000 for the house, right? I think that's exactly what it was. She owes $63,000, but she's behind on her mortgage and it needs work. So I told her, no problem, Mrs. Seller. Why don't we do this? I'll take care of your back payments. I'll pay the closing costs. I'll give you your price. As soon as I said that, she was so excited she couldn't run to sign a piece of paperwork fast enough. But I said, Mrs. Seller, because of this, and this, I am typically buying with no money down in these situations. See what I'm doing? I gave her something, right? I made her happy. I got her on a high. And then from there, I'm going to tell her what I typically do, which is you always want to get no money down. Well, in this instance, the seller needed a little bit of money down to pay off some debts. So what I did was I said, fine, Mrs. Seller, you have $10,000 in equity. I'll give you, what is the least that you would need up front? See, I could have told her I'll give you $7,000, $4,000, $5,000. I'm not doing that. I'm asking her, what is the least that you would need up front? She told me $5,000. I said, no problem. I said, for the other $5,000, what we can do is we can do very small monthly payments every month. What does this do? We still get her what she wants. spread out over a period of time in a small monthly increment that still allows us or our buyer, if we assign it, to cash flow healthy. So she was like, yeah, that would be great. Whatever you want to do, I'm fine with, as long as we can work this stuff out. And I said, absolutely. I said, Kathy, based on this, and this, what would be the least that you'd accept monthly? See what I did there? I'm asking her every question. I'm not coming out and giving her this. She said, I have no idea, Mike. She said, I do know I have a credit card bill of $350 per month. I said, well, Kathy, I think her name was Kathy or it was something else. And what we did is I told her, Kathy, if we were to pay you monthly payments, I don't think I could do $350, but I could probably do $200 to $250. She said, no problem. Let's do $225. And for that other $5,000, we're just paying her $225 until it's paid in full. So there is no term length. It's just until it's paid. That's it.
So, Mike, I want to back up a little bit to the down payment. What do you use to gauge how much is a feasible down payment to the seller, right? Whether you're keeping it or assigning it.
Absolutely. So when it comes to a seller, right, and when it comes to a creative deal, most buyers, depending on the situation in the deal, they're looking to be all in for 10% of the purchase price, right? So this typically the rule of thumb is if it's a no equity deal and you're just taking over their payments, you have to be very strict on that down payment percentage rule of 10%. That includes your assignment fee, money to the seller, any closing costs, or any backed payments. When a house has equity in it, which this house does, it's actually a house that we're buying on terms at the 65% rule, meaning that there is 35% in equity at the time of sale. So with that being said, yes, you can increase your down payment overall percentage. But what do you look for to make sure that it still makes sense if it's over the 10% rule? I look to make sure that the deal still has a cash-on-cash return of 20% or more as a long-term rental after everything has been paid. So if we assign it our assignment fee, cash to the seller, any backed payments, closing costs, any rehab needed, remember, most creative deals you're not refinancing because the whole point is the low interest rates.
Say that again?
You're not refinancing because the whole purpose is the low interest rates. So a lot of times the reason we like pretty houses is because at the end of the day, if you put $30,000-$40,000 into a creative deal, unless you're going to sell it on the market or you like to refinance, you're not getting your money back. So how do you make sure that it still makes sense for the buyer? If you're putting more money down than normal, and normal is 10% or less, it still has to have a cash-on-cash return of 20% or more. And I promise you that deal will fly, or you will have a great deal for your own portfolio.
So let's recap there a little bit. He just went into his tangent, like I like to say. So basically, when do you know you need a longer term? One, if you have to give them a big down payment, they absolutely need it. There's no negotiating there, which will happen, right? Number two, they're asking for interest. They themselves are an investor and they want interest, right? So let's do a longer term. And then third, they want full price for their home, right? You need a longer term.
Absolutely. And what does Jay mean by a longer term, right? Because the market is a little wonky right now, my rule of thumb and our rule of thumb when we're negotiating with the seller is a minimum of about 7 years for a term. Unless, see, there's always an unless, right? It's not cookie cutter, it's not cut and dry. Minimum of a 7-year term on any type of creative financing deal if your plan is to hold it long term. If you are going to buy the property because you're getting it so cheap and you're going to flip it or you're going to just relist it on the market, you can do a shorter term. But if you're going to do a rent to own or rent it out and you're paying full price for it, think about it. How are you going to be able to buy the seller out if you're paying full price today in 3, 4, sometimes even 5 years, depending on the market? sometimes you're not paying the loan down fast enough to build equity, and the appreciation isn't building up fast enough for you to gain traction and for you to be able to sell that home for a profit in the future, right?
So remember to think logically through these terms as well. The numbers can look great, but logically doesn't make sense.
Correct. And in terms of a seller and an investor seller, they're very different, and they have different motives, and they have different reasons on what they want. An investor seller is very monetary driven. A regular homeowner seller is driven based on their why, their hardships, or their needs.
Yep, that is a great point to highlight, because I know in your closing calls you kind of take similar aspect but two different routes. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Exactly.
So basically, that's what we wanted to talk to you guys about today and kind of highlight of what the next steps are after you ask those questions, right? And if you're having a hard time, take a second to go into our website and look into our resources, right? They will help you. We have a lot of creative financing resources, even to help you pitch creative financing to sellers. Our website is romanscreativeacademy.com. If you have any questions, we'll link it here. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. We'd love to answer any questions you guys have. Creative financing, building a business, wholesaling, even rental portfolio, what it is to do rent to own. We have a slew of things that we can talk to you guys about, and we would love to hear what it is that you're curious about, right?
Absolutely. And, we always say a lot of our students, they love the fact that we go over the negotiating skills. We dive deep into it. And we also make sure that they know all the specific questions to ask sellers when that lead comes in the door. So like Jay said, head to our website. You can go to our Instagram. It's in our link tree, or we'll drop the link below in the description of this video. Guys, as always, thank you for showing up. Thank you for supporting us. We hope that you're getting the value out of these videos.
We love to keep it raw.
We keep it real, we keep it raw, and we don't leave any details out. So with that being said, guys, make sure to like, comment, subscribe if you love this video. We'd love to see you guys here again next week. We're going to be here every week for the foreseeable future.
See you guys.